Right. Okay, we're going to start the second half of the morning. Hope you're all refueled after 2 great sessions. We're now cooking in the Drum Labs, which sounds a bit like Breaking Bad. So no, we're not doing anything illegal in the Drum Labs, but yeah, we've got the energy up, and we've got 2 more great sessions to come. I'm Branwell Johnson. I'm the Group Content Director at Propeller, and I'm going to chair this panel, which will last about 45 minutes, and hopefully we'll have time to build in some Q&A time within that 45 minutes. And what we're going to do is look at making your agency more findable, famous, and future ready. It's a timely theme. As you know from working with your own clients, it's so hard to get cut through. So many distractions from the target audience. Getting that attention is you have to work really hard at. So you really do need to build up fame, reputation, and strategies for marcoms. You've also got to now factor in intelligent AI search, which is something some of you may have pondered about how your agency and business actually shows up. If someone puts in a prompt and says, what are the 10 best independent creative agencies in London? Come on, let's have a show of hands. Has anyone actually used ChatGPT or another large language model to look up their own business? All right, good. I suggest everyone does, just to see what the LLMs are saying about you, and then figure out some tactics to make them say even better things about you. And we will get into that a little bit later on, along with many other things. So agencies have it tough. You're working so hard for clients, you often don't have the time to pay attention to your own profile and your own brand. And that proverb, the cobbler's children have no shoes, springs to mind. But it's so important to think about how you get that sustainable competitive advantage with your own marcom strategy. So I've got 4 experienced agency hands to share their perspectives with me about what they're doing and their insights. And I will now introduce them, starting with Karen Forbes, Chief Growth Officer at social media and influencer marketing agency Coolr. Karen's a commercial leader with more than 2 decades of experience across global media, including at CNN, at entertainment, including Think Jam, and with agency growth. And Coolr is Adweek's 4th fastest growing internet agency. Next, got Stephen Kenwright, non-executive director and consultant to marketing agencies. He's held board positions, independents and networks, and he founded Rise at 7 in 2019, growing annual revenues to £7 million, opening 4 offices, including New York, hiring 110 staff, winning 70 industry awards. Such an underachiever. Right, we have Katie Mitchell next, Managing Director at design and production agency Scene Studios, which partners with some of the world's biggest retail brands on future-facing experiences with human-centric touch. She works directly with top-tier brands and creatives at businesses like Nike, Selfridges, Jimmy Choo. I know they've got several activations going on this week, so it's exciting time at Scene Studios. And last but not least, we've got Steve Garside, Chief Growth Officer at integrated creative agency TMW. He steered 3 record years of growth of the business, knows a thing or two about agency reputation. He's been winning agency reputation of the year titles each of his last 10 years. So, star-studded panel, plenty to talk about. Let us start straight away with one of the questions that did arise in the first session this morning about cut-through and differentiation. There is a sense there's an oversupply of agencies. The number of agencies in advertising, marketing and media has doubled in the past decade by some counts to 30,000. And, combined with what could be a tough economic landscape, that means you've really got to stand out. So I guess the first question is why agencies do struggle to differentiate, and what does differentiation mean in this space? And maybe, Karen, you could kick us off.
Thank you, Bromwell. You touched on it there. There's thousands of agencies, even in the UK alone, and actually being different is harder than ever. I think in the case of Coolr and many small independents at the beginning, you're building the plane while you're flying it. So the focus in the first or early years is very much on, delivering quality output, bringing in great clients, and you deprioritize or neglect that need to develop that positioning or value proposition. But ultimately, attention has to shift there, because beyond the good work, you need to kind of appeal to a broader set as you scale, a broader set of buyers or customers. So a point of differentiation or a defensible territory is really key in this market.
I think
Observational.
part of it as well is because I think when we think about positioning and we think about differentiation, we don't go a little bit further up the funnel and think about segmentation and who are we trying to target, because we've got to look different to someone. And we find it quite easy to focus on ourselves and go, we could look different to these set of competitors. We can usually tell who we're up against most of the time, or at least frequently. But we don't necessarily think that actually if we wanted a different type of buyer, or if we wanted to work with a different type of business, a bigger business or a more established business or whatever it might be, they're going to have a different set of requirements. So a lot of the time, we're not necessarily thinking buyer first and thinking about what that particular customer wants that agency to look and feel like.
Yeah, I think to add to that, I think a lot of agencies concentrate too much on the product and actually not the why. Why do our clients want to talk to us over the saturated market? And when you start to focus on the whys and the USPs, that's when it gets exciting, and that's when you can really show those proof points. So yes, you might have the all shiny, all dancing product over here, but there's many agencies that can offer that. So when you start to look at that why, that's when it starts to get really interesting. And I think another piece, that kind of stems from that is also around this idea that we talk about a lot at Scene Studios, and it's, connected thinking and kind of personifying your agency. And I think, humans want to shop and buy from people. And actually, when you go out there too commercially, that's when it gets, you get lost in the ether of options. So actually, by starting to personify your brand and your agency, that's again where it starts to get really interesting and people feel like they can relate and connect a lot more authentically.
Steve, you got anything to add?
I think buying agencies has changed a lot in the near 20 years I've been doing this, and even kind of prior to then. The big thing for me, and I think really just summing everything up, is we need to just keep putting ourselves in the shoes of our clients, in the shoes of our buyers, and doing it on a regular basis, because it changes, month by month, how clients are finding agencies. It's ever evolving, and we need to keep asking ourselves a constant stream of questions to make sure we're making it easy for them.
Okay, on the differentiation point, do you think agencies need a niche service, a niche offer, or culture, values, and voice? Are they all part of the mix that helps you get on the consideration list? Yeah, Steve, if you want to go.
I do think that niche can be a little bit misleading, because one of the places we initially go to when we think about niche is industry or sector. And that's not actually usually helpful, because if you are a generalist agency right now, or you're working with a broad range of clients, you're going to draw some circles around the kind of clients you do good work for that pay you a lot of money. And you're going to find it's financial services, retail, and travel. And that's because they pay the most money. And so that's who everyone has. And then you try and draw some parallels between those industries to work out what's good. And those industries don't feel like they have anything in common. When I was Branwell, I was heading up digital at a large automotive retailer, and we got some pitches from some really good agencies when we were looking to appoint a supplier. And they brought some really interesting case studies of things like Go Compare, because they thought automotive, that counts. But we're selling cars. We're thinking about something that's a product that's going to take 10 months, 12 months to buy. You're going to look on YouTube. You're going to look on Instagram. You're going to look in the real world and decide which one feels right for you. You might do a test drive. You're pretty excited about it. It's a huge purchase. Going to keep it for 4 years. Car insurance is something you hate. You don't want to buy that. You have to do it as soon as you bought your car, and you're going to go on a price comparison website and choose the cheapest quote that you've heard the brand of. And so those two things are completely different. Now, if those agencies had brought us a case study of Cath Kidston, how are we getting more people into the stores? We're like, we want to get people into our stores. That's entirely a close parallel. So niche is the easy things that we think are easy about niche are actually, not really that helpful most of the time.
Okay, and anyone got any other thoughts about the culture and the importance of your values when you're going into conversations?
No. Well, I was actually going to refer back to your point on humans buy from humans. And I think the business isn't just a tick box. It has to be kind of intrinsically linked with what you're selling, the positioning of the agency. And I think for a lot of the partners and the buyers that we connect with, they connect with our energy and the culture of the business, because that's the teams that are going to be effectively their brand guardians. So having that connection and making sure we're casting teams that connect with those brands and buyers and truly understand their challenges, their audiences, is really important in building that relationship.
No, I was just going to add about the values point is we actually did an interesting exercise not too long ago. We've grown over the last kind of couple of years. And one of the things I was asking myself is, when new people come into our agency, could they talk about Scene Studios how I think we should be talking about ourselves, just from knowing what we put out there on social media, marketing, what's ChatGPT saying? You know, it's a really interesting exercise. How do those it's a kind of a good measurement piece to anyone that has got new people joining, ask them. And actually we took that inside and we did a session, a kind of branding and value session that was really, really helped the marketing and, you know, the kind of next year strategy. And we asked ourselves questions like, if the agency were a person, a celebrity, who would they be? Who wouldn't they be? If we were a house, what would that house look like? How would you engage in that house? How would you welcome people into that house? And they're all the cues that we've now fed into our values that are then going to, you know, stretch down into our marketing strategy for next year. But again, it's all looped to that personification of a company, and some kind of guidance of how to do that.
Steve, can I introduce another topic? Maybe you can pick it up. Just from your perspective of what you're seeing in the market in the last couple of years, last few months, is it a more emotional or rational buy? Where does it sit on the spectrum at the moment when you're doing business?
I mean, my personal belief is that you really just have to cater and do your homework on the individual, because people have these inbuilt values on what they believe and what they stand for. We actually have a tool within our business that can help kind of scrape those kind of profiles and kind of work out who our buyers kind of really are, you know, beyond the LinkedIn profiles, beyond what they say online. And sometimes we cast according to that. Sometimes it works really well. Sometimes maybe the tool is a bit more work. But we find it kind of can help us cast for, okay, this is more of an emotional buyer. Maybe we'll have our values on page 2 of our creds. Maybe they're not important. And we're just casting or playing our cards and casting our people appropriately.
Good answer.
Yeah, what I was going to add to that is it's almost like the equivalent account plan within a client service team, but doing that for your new business leads. People are blasted with lead gen comms and sort of cold outbound. So you effectively get to the right brands that you want to work with. It's understanding their pain points, their challenges, and really mapping that out. And it takes a lot of homework, but it means that you're talking to the right people in the right ways.
I think if we join together all of the things that we've talked about just in that at one point, right? So there are rational buyers and emotional buyers, and it's entirely reasonable as a strategy for an agency to say we only sell to emotional buyers. Like if you are an agency where rationally you're probably not a good choice, you're not the right choice for lots of reasons, but emotionally you totally are the exciting, cool new thing, you are shiny and you're really interesting to a certain type of person, then you'll close a lot of that and you'll struggle to close the rational buyers. Likewise, you might be an agency that's very good with a rational argument and a real detailed sell of exactly what the benefits and features are, right? And it's about playing to your strengths. I think sometimes we don't necessarily go back and look across those buyer subsets and think, actually, are we actually only just closing half of these because that's who we're geared up towards, really?
Just an anecdote on that, if I may. In November 23, we pitched against 3 other very established agencies as a CRM account, and we got the joint top marks. We got 30 out of 40, but we won. And I said, why did we win? And they said, because you're the right agency for us now. The other agency might be the right agency in 2 or 3 years' time. I think by that they meant that they had a stronger tech platform and whatnot, but we were the right agency emotionally for them at that present moment. And we did that through casting and whatnot, but we got the same exam answer. So there, it's just those very fine margins can really help in marketing and new business.
Wow. What a great set of answers. Thank you for that. I'm going to move us on to what I'm going to call the new agency marketing mix, the actual marketing approaches, content formats, and the touch points are now more nuanced, more sophisticated, and there's more of them than ever. I'd just like to ask each of you, from your perspective, what does a smart agency marketing mix look like today? You're next to me, so you may as well kick off.
I think I'm speaking to Coolr's history. So in the early days, it was tactics, right? So it was blasting, like how do we get visible? How are we in as many places as possible in front of potential business decision makers? Now it's growth strategy. We've built a new business engine that is multifaceted and underpinned by HubSpot, a CRM, so that we're measurable in all of our impact. And really thinking about how we are consistent across those touch points. So IRL experientials back post-COVID. Events are very important to us, both where we show up and how we own them. We have a series of touch points that kind of talk to CMO down to marketing exec clients. We're also then working out how we sweat that content. So how do we take that content into our thought leadership? How do we look at showing up in PR? How do we take that to our social media? So we're thinking about it as mini campaigns and then the evergreen piece and always on and beyond that. But effectively, like underpinning everything with a growth strategy that has a very defined thought leadership program and strategy. We have a creative platform that everything that is up to, so that it's not just throwing everything at the wall, it's working together and then measured through CRM.
I was going to say something quite similar, but I think the coherent piece is really important. There's so many avenues and ways that we can talk to our prospects or our existing clients these days, and it's really working out what's right for you as an agency. Because it can come unstuck and actually it can look pretty chaotic from the outside and confusing to somebody that doesn't know what you're trying to say. And what we've started to do is be quite consistent in the way that we market ourselves. We're really lucky that a lot of our work is visually engaging, so we, to Karen's point, sweat that a lot. How can we turn that on its head? How can we offer kind of BTS and behind the scenes kind of intel into some of the activations that we're doing? How can we interview the people that have maybe worked on that project? And interestingly, we've often also actually got clients to do vox pops and interviews and be involved in those pieces, because actually it gives you that kind of advocacy that you're after as an agency. So they're the kind of tips and tricks that we've been looking at, is really about this motion, moving image, spoken word. That's what's engaging people on the platforms that we're on. And I think also just to tie in with that is that you can't expect one person to do all of that. We can no longer hire a junior social marketing exec and expect that person to manage all of your channels, get out on social media, manage budgets, get the strategy onboarded, ensure it ladders up to, your CRM systems. It's a real collaborative approach, and that might sound like it's quite an indulgent piece of advice, because yes, we've definitely been in the world where everyone's been mucking in, but we've got to the place now where we've got a really nice, solid, small but mighty team, and we've got content directors feeding into that, or videographers that maybe are on site capturing these vox pops, copywriters that maybe freelance every now and again. So once you've got that content piece, it's how you can maximize it and be really cost effective, and maybe start with freelance and work up to having an in-house videographer, because that is, a bit of a luxury. But it's about consistency, giving, again, that human approach, that behind the curtain kind of insight into that world through, for us, motion and video, and then also investing in it in the right way. You need to invest to get the right results.
Steve, what about your view of the marketing mix? Has it changed in the last few years?
So I just want to say, I love the behind the scenes stuff. I did my research. Brilliant, really love it. We'll probably may copy that. I agree. I agree with Karen and Katie. I think these are great leading examples. But I would say for anyone who has just got a new job or been there for a year or so, I probably would, if I was you, I probably would throw stuff at the wall and test and try and do different things. Get some of your most senior people or some of the biggest voices in your agency in a room. You've probably got agency values. Work out together how they ladder up to a proposition and try different things. And I think you maybe, after a year or so of testing, learning, failing, succeeding, hopefully, in some cases, you'll find what works for you. And then you can take it to level 2, level 3, which I think now these guys are talking about. That'd be my view on it.
And Stephen, from your various experiences, what would be your perspective?
I think to start with, like Katie's right, like the first thing to decide is what are you going to consistently say? As in, we do X for Y type of company, maybe we have a Z point of view on it. But once you've got that platform nailed and you know what you want to do, you've just got to recognize that everything is just an inbox. So an email inbox, because you're doing outreach, that's an inbox. LinkedIn is an inbox. The LinkedIn feed is an inbox. The Instagram feed is an inbox. And all you're doing is just showing up every single day. And so while it feels like it's a grind and you have to just consistently post stuff and you're growing your platform or whatever, the reality is most of the time, most people aren't buying from you and you just got to be there at the time that they are. So it really doesn't matter which mixture of channels you want to pick. If you've got an unlimited budget, you pick all the channels. Of course you would. But, do a couple that feel like the right kind of thing. Some people love being on camera. Some people can do the video thing really well. Some people like to be on stage. Some people like to write. All of those things are totally valid. And there is a subset of buyers for each of those tactics. So I think the one thing that's changing and has continued to change for a really long time, there's no rainmakers anymore. There is no single person who just makes all the deals happen. It's the same with social media. There's not someone who just makes all the marketing happen. Like if you're going to do the personal brand thing, which is a good thing to do, don't expect to get traction just sitting there on your own, posting your thing and hoping people engage with it. You've got a team. They have to engage with it. You have to weaponize the people that you have behind you.
Excellent. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention PR in the broad sense and whether it's a consideration in the mix. Who has a PR focus at the moment?
We do with Propeller. Shout out
Excellent.
to Propeller.
Same.
I didn't see that one up at all.
Thanks for placing me on the panel. Big focus on PR. It's kind of such a crucial touch point. I think it moves beyond just we've won a client, we've got a new hire. The vanity piece in some respects, it has to move through into 2 key pillars for me. One is spokespeople across the agency, domain owners, heads of department. It can't just be the SLT, it can't just be the voice of the CEO. Because again, as you scale, that CEO isn't going to be in every pitch meeting or, temple report. So how are we bringing those people forward? And actually, how are you using your next gen voices? We work in a social media agency and we've got some of the biggest and best talent. It's their first job and they're shooting content for brands straight into TikTok that is like creating millions of organic views. So how are we bringing them forward to help get them to help tell our story? And then, how do we use the voices of the business? And then the second pillar for me is point of view. There is a sea of sameness. We've all seen it on our LinkedIn feed. We scroll past, and what I would really encourage everyone to do is what makes you stop on that post, that video, and watch it and read it? Is it making you laugh? We believe for our clients that every post, comment, and share should make you feel something. Well, we want to do that as an agency too. How do we not blend in? How are we not generic? And that really involves having a perspective, a point of view, and provocations, challenge industry opinions or come in with something that feels fresh. It has to be authentic, it can't be for the sake of it. But go to your team and learn who has those points of view and bring them forward.
I won't argue for strong points of view enough, being a former journalist. Like to hear an opinion. Katie, were you about to say something on PR?
Well, I was, again, similar to Karen, and it's going back to that personification piece that I mentioned at the start. To be totally honest, the reason that I'm focusing on PR is to get my team speaking. I'm a real advocate for, it shouldn't just sit, like Karen was saying, with the SLT or even just with a certain person or people. Everybody that works for your agency should be really proud of that and actually they're often the ones that get talking to people in unexpected places and mention where they work. You know, they might have a different type of following on their socials or their LinkedIn that could spark a bit of interest, and they go back to whoever's in their business and say, I think we should be working with Scene Studios, or, you know, so I really want the team to feel passionate about the work that they're doing. And actually, by looking at that PR piece, we can start to pull out the nuances that can interact with the wider audience within our agency and make people feel comfortable doing it. Because a lot of the team are like, absolutely not me, not doing that. You know, I feel really uncomfortable doing that. But by giving them the tools and the confidence really helps. We've started to do really thorough wrap-up decks of all of our projects and actually having everybody feed into those. So they've got the copy, they've got the, you know, the interesting details that might surprise and delight, you know, clients. They've got the imagery. And so it's a really easy way for them to start talking about it on their channels as well. So, yeah.
It's great advice. If you've got PR, also very interested to know how you make it count. You know, you celebrate the headline, you celebrate the profile in whatever the trade title might be. But how do you make it count beyond that? Steve, do you work with any of the PR pieces that may come across your desk?
So our PR strategy is really simple. It's broken down into 3. So momentum, which is the news, the wins, the hires. Expertise, which is what we've been talking about, celebrating our people, celebrating our knowledge on the areas that we're trying to push. And then we ask ourselves, how can we be, as an agency, how can we be a force for good? How can we contribute to society? Might be a little bit lofty, but we do think about that a lot. But certainly, how can we contribute to the industry? When it comes to how we manage it, we have a dedicated resource internally, and we also use some external stuff for some of the bigger pieces. So if there's a particular feature or a particular thought leadership piece that we want to push, and we'll all kind of meet on a semi-regular basis and work it out like that. But I think what I've found working in all different types of agencies, big and small, is that it needs to have that senior leadership focus. So it needs to be kind of brought in from the very top. Now I'm saying that, but it needs to be narrow, because if you involve everyone, nothing will ever get done. And we've all been there, right? So it's just trying to get, the hardest job in an agency is to get an agency ad out or something like that. Back in the day, Marketing Week, we used to do ads when you were there, and it was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do, 20 years into agencies.
I feel your pain. Again, Stephen, you must have PR'd some good pieces out there over the years with the amazing track record of your agency. How did you make those pieces work and sweat towards actually getting into business conversations?
Well, there were a couple of things that we do, and, specifically talking about Katie's point about video, we had a vlog. So we would make a big old deal on the vlog about a thing and just really try and show that it meant something. So we won an award, we would show the behind the scenes of us actually winning the award and all that kind of thing. And actually being award winning as an agency is like table stakes, right? Every agency is award winning. What matters is that you show that it was important and that it has a value to it. It only has the value attached to it. And I think the other thing is, like, there would usually be the same profile pieces that you would expect. Like, we'd be in the drum for something, we'd be in Marketing Week for something, whatever it might be. But when Rise at 7 was doing its thought leadership, it did it in Cosmo. It did it in the kind of places where our clients' customers would be, because we know that that's where our clients are. They are much more likely to be surprised and interested in looking at an agency that has no competitors if they are reading Cosmo and find, wow, I do marketing and it's right there in front of me. Whereas if they're reading, I don't know, the drum, right, it's full of marketing agencies and you've got a completely different job to do. So it does depend on the audience for sure.
Yeah. Let's have a tough question. Anything you've tried that didn't work, and you've talked about, test and learn. Anything you've tried that didn't work, you probably won't revisit, but you learned something from it. Go on, Karen, you're nodding furiously.
Loads. From a few years ago, actually, a previous agency. I'm not going to tell you one's from Coolr. No, it's really a good lesson in recontact strategy. This was probably 6-7 years ago, working for an entertainment agency, hired out a cinema, had this sort of bells and whistles TikTok presentation on how we can help brands win on the platform. Pulled in an amazing audience of category market, business decision makers. So this sort of stage was set ultimately to create new relationships and effectively get more leads into the funnel. And the time wasn't taken beyond that event to get those names and contacts into the CRM, understand how to recontact them, maybe from a bit of ignorance in terms of how to do that properly at the time. But lack of time, you have to make the time, you have to invest in that piece and be really patient. We've got a recent win where we were engaging them a year ago. They went quiet after a CMO change, and we very carefully and strategically nurtured them, recontacted them when they had a new CMO this year with a very sort of topical piece of news. Actually, we got placed in the BBC, so it was like, a nice piece to share with them. And they were like, this is now the good time to talk. And within 2 weeks, we turned that around. That closed last week. So it's about how you think about the short, mid and long-term wins and nurture them like babies.
Sound advice. Anyone else going to own up to, or confess, or whatever, to something that they tried that maybe didn't quite land, but it was useful learnings?
My first agency was an SEO agency called Branded 3, and it was part of a network. And some of the other network agencies, some of our sister businesses, said you should do these CMO events and you do the speed dating thing with some really senior people. We've had loads of success with that. And so we tried it, and I think we probably spent 40 grand on speed dating with some CMOs. And the problem is when you sell SEO, you either want that or you don't as a starting point. So there's a lot of things that CMOs want. Maybe SEO is one of them, maybe it isn't. And even if it is, the best you can hope for is, I've got a guy who does that. I'll introduce you to them. So I think there isn't such a thing as like wrong tactics. There's just wrong tactics for you, because that did work for the other agencies. It just didn't work for us. We were terrible at it. And then from that, we decided we could probably spend 40 grand better, and decided to put our own event on in Leeds Arena and got 1,000 SEOs in the room who were really interested. So it's just about choosing what are we actually going to be good at? Like, where will the people who buy from us actually be? And I've done CMO events since and been good at them, but it's not right for everyone. It wasn't right for us for sure.
Thanks for the honesty there, Stephen. Are you hiding your light under a bushel, or have you got one you want to unveil?
I think the example that I've got is actually, looking back, it might have been right for us at the time, but now it probably would not work. I think, nearly 10 years ago, when we were still kind of finding our feet, we really wanted to establish the thought process behind our work and the strategy piece, which, is a really important part of our agency. But the way that we were doing it was like really deep diving into a lot of theory and, releasing these really in-depth, quite technical reports. And it was lost. They were way too long. There was too much theory in there. We were even releasing like these books that you could try to depict. And as I say, they look great, and they, at the time, gave us a lot to talk about. But I think actually on the surface, they were too complex, and we didn't pick them apart enough and actually give our audience, smaller sound bites and things that they could easily digest. And it kind of bamboozled people quite a lot. It did lay a lot of the foundations for the agency. So it definitely had some learnings for us internally, but it probably wasn't something that we needed to share externally. So it was kind of getting that balance of what do we keep for us and for our, our team and for us as an agency and our journey, and what do we release? You don't have to release everything. Some of it needs to be kept for you. And we probably released a little bit too much of our thinking in theory.
Okay, understand that one. And Steve, you got anything to wrap with?
Very practical piece of advice. We did this big thought leadership piece about understanding the nation in 2013. So 2012 was a packed year, Queen Jubilee, the Olympics. 2013, we had branded the empty 13, like what have people got to look forward to in 2013. Done all this research, beautiful infographics. Let's get this in front of marketing directors and CMOs. We sent out the infographics with an offer of a meeting, but I put some of them in just nice perspex frames, but I put the odd one in glass frames. So my piece of advice is do not send out glass frames as a DM piece.
Expensive and dangerous.
And we got 1 or 2 responses, but not positive responses.
As
Surprising.
long as they weren't from the casualty war, that's fine. But no, thank you for sharing. Okay, I did say we would talk about AI and how it might be changing some of the ways you show up and changing some of the kind of ways buyers research you. Stephen, I'll hand over to you at this point. How are things changing, and what should we be bearing in mind with the large language models about how our own businesses, our own agencies show up?
Ironically, things aren't changing very much at all. And the reason is because I think if you view it as, if we think about this in SEO terms and think about how we might have shown up previously, we've got this idea that we might be able to track it because people search for a keyword and we show up for a keyword or we don't. And there's all these tools that enable us to track that, and that's really helpful. But if I search for something in the north on Google, not even AI, if I search for something in the north and you search for something down here, we'll get different results. If I search on my mobile or my desktop, we'll get different results. If I search logged in or logged out, I'll get different results. If I search for it before, I'll get a different result. So all of this tracking that we feel like we've had for a very long time has actually been a lie, and we don't have that at all. So if we now think that things are very difficult to track because everything's so conversational, it's actually where we've been for probably about 8-9 years. So it's actually not that difficult in that tracking sense. We've got the same amount of data that we probably had before, realistically. And then likewise, one of my roles is I sit on the advisory board for Systrix, which is a bit of SaaS software that does AI tracking, SEO tracking, and all sorts of other things as well. And so they've done some really interesting research over the last couple of months, published the first one maybe 2 months ago that's tracking what shows up in DeepSeek and ChatGPT and Gemini and how does it differ. And some of the things that that it's highlighting feel like revolutions and actually are exactly the same. For example, you will always, particularly in Gemini and to a degree ChatGPT, be cited along with a bunch of other examples. Like these do not give you a single answer most of the time. If you say, which is the best agency for me doing this thing, it will give you 10. And that feels weird. All of a sudden, we have this list of competitors. That's what a search engine results page is, 10 blue links. So all of these things are just another interface that we just have to contend with, that's all. It's really helpful to know that actually they're working in the same way. We talked about PR a little while ago as well. They're fueled by PR. They're fueled by what's mentioned in the press, what's cited as being good in the press. Like anything, you can game it. And I would suggest that the fact that I've said you can game it would probably imply that it's a thing you shouldn't do because it's not going to last for very long if you do it. So most of the time, with quite few exceptions, this is quite similar to how things have been for a very long time. But you just have some slightly different ways of tracking things, and it's just a different set of results. What you'll get as your competitors in Google, what you'll get as your competitors in LinkedIn's suggestions of other agencies, the ones that you'll get in the top 100 digital agencies or whatever it is that you're tracking, and the ones you get in ChatGPT would be different ones. The thing that matters is probably the volume of the ChatGPT results is increasing. More people use it. That's all.
That sounds reassuring when I unpick it. Anyone on the panel kind of looked at this and addressed their own profile on the large language models yet, or has it just been too early so far to give much bandwidth to this?
We know we want to look at it more. And that's actually really assured me. Thank you. But we have done the ChatGPT thing. We have searched for our agency. We've asked it questions. And actually, we know from some of our SEO kind of data research that people are finding us through ChatGPT, which is really interesting. So we can see where the traffic is coming from. But to your point, that's great. We're coming up on search engines as such. And I think because of that information that we know, we're maybe thinking a little bit more about how we market ourselves or the wording that we use, the way that we describe the agency, to think a bit more about how people are probably using ChatGPT or what they're asking the kind of program to give them. So we've started to think a little bit around that. But again, it's a little bit like how you think about traditional SEO and other kind of plugins. So we've started to look at it. We know that it's important and it's brilliant that it's there because it's getting people to our page. It's just maybe finding the best ways of using that data to our advantage.
I think from us, it's, to echo that, knowing that our buyers are going there, they're finding press links predominantly through that platform, and it is getting us, from a desk research point of view, onto pitch lists. Again, it's not a silver bullet. We're just making it part of our extended SEO, so now AI SO strategy, so that because we're using the kind of consistent messaging, making sure that our coverage across PR site, vlogs, blogs, etc., has a red thread, because then ultimately the output will be more successful and will show up in more search.
Because we're an agency that offers a very full suite of services, we found that by doubling down on PR across our expertise levels, so empowering the heads of CRM, the heads of social, the heads of creative within our agency, and giving them targets, to kind of get that, make sure that we're sort of on these desk research lists. We're finding that's helping. But to Casey's point, we're scratching the surface at the moment. It's been very interesting to hear Stephen kind of talk about it kind of in depth and with all of his knowledge. And I think, we need to kind of really work out what a proper strategy is.
I'm sure Stephen will be around later for consultations. We've got a couple of quick minutes left. Maybe time for one burning question. Has anyone got a question they'd like to put to the panel? Okay, yep, try and direct it to me and I'll pass it on. How do you get your people to prioritize marketing? Is a great question to finish with.
Take people on a journey. So ultimately, SLT buy-in the first instance from a strategic, like how could it and will it shift the needle and measurement to be able to prove that at pace, so short-term, long-term gains, and actually taking the whole team on that journey. We spend a lot of time with everyone in the agency on how they can get involved and why it matters. Like, how can your marketing raise the profile of those individuals within their LinkedIn? It gives them content to share if they're fronting videos or things like that. And reporting back, making sure that you're measuring your MQLs into SQLs so that you can show that it's working. And don't be scared to freelance, outsource different elements of the activation, because bringing in videographers, bringing in people that can create and produce stuff at scale, or a suite of content, will help you kind of push that through a content calendar, bring in expertise. And actually sometimes we can't see the label from inside the jar, and bringing in that external viewpoint helps us tell our own story.
And I was going to say, don't be afraid to ask clients how they've heard of you. We do it a lot, especially with obviously new clients, just out of interest, how did you hear about us? And it might be a referral, it might be a recommendation, but a lot of the time it's, actually, I Googled this, or I saw this piece of work. And it's being really confident and bold with that, and you taking that knowledge and being like, look, we know that all of our inbound is pretty much from our marketing. So actually we focus on our marketing to up our inbound. Outbound's obviously very important and it works, but I'd say a lot more of our traffic, it actually comes to us. And I'm, a massive believer that it is because of the way that we talk about our work and people seeing it. So yeah, I would say just be quite bold and say, could we just check in to see how people are finding us? Ask our clients, because I found that's a really interesting place to start.
I would tell them that no client is forever, and the average length of a client agency relationship is 3 years. That should make them take marketing seriously, I think.
Do you want to wrap up at all, Stephen?
I think it's ironic that marketing agencies don't prioritize marketing. I think that's kind of a failing on our part. I'm quite fond there are some agencies that never will as well, right? Like if marketing doesn't have a seat at the board, which it should, then you sometimes have a bit of an uphill battle. I'm quite fond of taking the kind of things like case studies, for example, of things that we do for clients, and just putting someone on the spot and saying, could we do this for us? And asking if they think it works or not. Because if they just say, no, it doesn't work, then what are we even doing here? Clearly, there's some value to it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a business.
A good wrap-up thought. Okay. I I hope you've all got some insights, taken something from this. The morning is about refueling agency growth, and fingers crossed you've got something you can put in your marketing fuel tank from this session. Big round of applause, please, for Karen, Stephen, 18, and Steve.